Hi all, we're going to have a look now at Ivanchuk versus Kasparov in round 7 of the Linares 1990 tournament. A very sharp encounter. So Ivanchuk, playing white, played e4. Kasparov played his favourite Sicilian defence, and after knight f3, d6, we see here emerging a Najdorf Sicilian. Kasparov plays his favourite a6 move here, which stops any bishop b5 checks. Ivanchuk now plays very sharply with bishop g5. He's inviting the poison pawn variation of the Najdorf. So after e6, f4, white's playing very aggressively and inviting black to play queen b6, seemingly materialistically trying to just grab this b2 pawn. Very heavily analysed variation. Ivanchuk plays now queen d2, and after queen takes b2, white has a heavy lead in development, and the queen on a3 is misplaced. However, black has some compensating factors. f5 was played, and now after knight c6, f takes c6, f takes c6, Ivanchuk continues with knight takes c6, so he doesn't mind the exchange of the two knights here. It means less pressure and less to worry about if not knight e5. Bishop b takes c6 was played, and after bishop e2, bishop e7, both sides now castle. Now rook b3, so gaining a tempo on black's queen. It hasn't got many choices. If queen a5, then knight d5, and white will have a big advantage. Let's have a quick look at this variation. Queen a5, knight d5, queen takes d2, Zwischenzug now, knight takes e7, bishop takes d2, king e7, and now e5. And what can black do? If d takes e, bishop b4 check, skewering, rook and king. And if knight d5 say, then e takes d6, and black's king is overloaded to defend that. Rook on f8. So say king e8, bishop h5 check, g6, rook takes f8, king takes f8, bishop f3, and white would have a massive advantage here according to Rybka. The main reason this bishop can't really do much, say bishop d7, rook b7, king e8, c4, knight f6, bishop g5, knight g8, and look at black's position, it would just be awful. So basically, this all was evidence that queen c5 check was the better move, not to allow any of this knight d5 stuff. Bishop e3 was played, and now we have a repetition. Now Ivanchuk avoids another repetition by playing king h1. In doing so, he loosens protection on the f1 rook. Kasparov immediately pounces on this by playing knight g4, because after bishop takes g4, he'll be playing e5 with a pin on this rook. Instead, Ivanchuk just plays h3. Kasparov plays e5 anyway, and after knight a4, Kasparov's queen goes back all the way to a7, and we see now check, king h8, 8 takes g4, e takes f4. So very sharp position. After knight b6, Kasparov favoured now, instead of playing rook b8, to actually dissolve the centre by playing d5, so sacrificing a pawn to get some piece play. After e takes, c takes, bishop takes d5, rook b8, he's encouraging white to exchange on c8, because if knight c4, then queen c7, protecting that pawn on f4, and black has a fine looking position. So knight takes c8, rook takes c8, and black's got good piece activity. And also this f4 pawn is difficult to take at the moment. In fact, Ivanchuk just preferred rook h3, going for the attack on h7. Kasparov playing now queen b6, so this move allows the queen now to come to d8, where it can also support the bishop on this diagonal, which we'll see is very important. Rook e1, bishop g5, rook e6, and now queen d8, temporarily also pinning this bishop to the queen. So c4, so the queen's free to move now. Rook b8 though, and black's rooks are very nice and very functional. The position here is materially level, but now we see after queen d3 a very interesting sequence of tactics. Kasparov defends and attacks at the same time with this bishop h4 move. Bishop can be useful in some lines by coming to g3 if black ever gets a check in on the first rank. Ivanchuk goes for the h7 pawn here. Kasparov just lets it go. So he lets it go, so he's a pawn down, and he goes now after rook d8, he sacrifices another pawn. So has Kasparov gone mad, or is this all being calculated? I believe that it was all calculated, because he wins now by force this bishop on h7, with this check now and rook e1, skewering the queen and rook. So the queen's overloaded to defend that bishop on h7. Kasparov just munches it now. So black is now a piece up for 2 pawns. After the check, g6. Perhaps a blunder here was played by Ivanchuk. He played rook h3. Rybka seems to think that white would have at least had a draw with rook f7 check. I don't really want to go into those variations, they're quite complicated. And if you want to go into it, please leave some comments on YouTube about this critical position at move 40. Rook h3 was played, and now Kasparov, he gets out of this pinning trouble by playing king g7, and after queen d4 check, king g8, queen e4, queen f6, so the bishop can now come to g5 potentially. Rook f3, queen d6 check, king h3. We're going now with the exotic finish found on chessgames.com and chesslab.com. This is a different finish from my local chess base or Chess Live DE. I believe this is probably more likely what occurred in the game, because it's a great finish. After king g7, white now played c5, attacking black's queen, and according to chessgames.com and chesslab.com, black now played rook h8 and white resigned. The queen would be immune, because if c takes d6, then bishop e1 or bishop f2 is mate in 1. And white is in severe trouble here to stop this bishop check with decisive crushing advantage. So if this was the final position, it's a great one, with black queen just being left and free. So very exciting stuff. Let's have a quick overview and summary now of this game. Very sharp tactical game. Ivanchuk played e4 and Kasparov played his favourite Sicilian. So we have the Sicilian Najdorf, in particular now the poison pawn variation. Kasparov's queen was getting kicked around and eventually ended up on a7 of all places. So I don't know if this is all theory. A very interesting part of this was this knight g4 move, exploiting that momentary pin on the f-file, slightly loose rook on f1. So after h3 we have some exchanges, knight for bishop there, and now Kasparov's pawn sacrifice opens up the position, and in doing so maximises the black piece activity across the centre and across the files. This bishop h4 stuff is very, very interesting, both attacking and defensive. And Kasparov bravely gives up his h7 pawn to go again 2 pawns down, but with further dynamics coming to his rescue, because he dynamically just wins that bishop on h7. Here I believe Ivanchuk went wrong with rook h3, when rook f7 check, according to Rybka, would have held a draw at least. So Kasparov managed to unravel this difficult position, where his bishop's almost threatening from being trapped, but it never quite works because of these checks would be mating the white king. So the bishop was immune for the moment, and after this sequence of moves, the bishop was free to escape. But in fact, it was very useful to support this rook h8 with the idea of bishop f2 mating. So in this final position, white had apparently resigned. If we have c takes d6, then bishop f2 would have been mate. So I hope you enjoyed that very sharp tactical encounter. And if you have any questions or comments, please leave them on YouTube. Thanks for listening.